11:03. All right, 11:03 a.m. And Esmeralda, can you do the roll call to ensure that we have a quorum, please?
Yes. Bonnie Wells,
Present.
Elaine Tess Campbell. Elaine Tess Campbell. John Cedillo.
Yes, I see Elaine. She needs to unmute.
John Yours.
Here.
Lavetta Levels.
Present.
Mildred Dominic.
Present.
And that is quorum.
Excellent.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Elaine. I don't think you could hear me before.
We hear you now. Thank you. I see you.
Okay, and we do have that the legal notice was posted, and if I could get a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Do we need a second for that?
I second
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, so it looks like we're going to start here with any public comments. Do we have anybody who signed up for public comments? Okay, so we will go on and move on to the topics for discussion. Try to go quick through this because I know some of you all came here last week, and I apologize for that we did not have the necessary quorum. So let's start with the meeting. We have everybody in your folders. Everybody in your folders should have the training subcommittee report, and those of you online, Bonnie Wells did email this to us a couple of weeks back before our initial meeting, and it's in our folders. It's titled CEAC Training Subcommittee Report, dated June 23rd, 2022.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was basically a summary of our last meeting that we had prior to the primary, where we discussed recommendations that we wanted to move to the full CEAC committee. And some of these have actually been approved and made changes to. So before we get to that, I think we should start with the training department update, so that we can know what has been going on with training, because I know there have been some changes, like I said. So we'll start with the training department update, and then we will move on to a discussion about our suggestions and improvements that we think need to be made.
Sure, well, thank you, everybody. I'm Melissa Kubik, Deputy Elections Administrator, and we have here Curtis Mitchell, who is our new training coordinator. Miss Lenora retired, though she still hangs out with us and works doing other things. And then Anna East Rodriguez at the end, she's our training, coordinator, clerk. So she handles all of the administrative duties in the training department. Laura, unfortunately, is on vacation. She's here on Friday, but she started her vacation this week, so she's not able to be with us. We have been busy in the training department. I think since you last met from the March election, we have heard a lot of the recommendations and really try to implement some of the changes, and some things were kind of impromptu forced on us due to some circumstances as well. So right now, our current focus is moving into the building next door. They've officially moved over there, so we should be prepared for training in that building as of November. It is a larger facility, so we have more, I think we can fit 75 people in the room, and the breakout rooms are expanded as well, so they'll be able to accommodate more people. There are tables and chairs and screens in the breakout rooms, so it makes it more accessible for everybody in terms of what we're able to do when we go to the breakout sessions. Our team's currently working on doing some video recording for the equipment setup and breakdown, so that we can have kind of a walk along process during those breakout sessions, as well as have it available online for people to review and refresh themselves prior to Election Day. In addition to that, we are going over the PowerPoint presentation, updating some of the scripting in that, kind of making sure we've covered all the points and all of the changes for the kind of the basic introduction piece of our training. Our judges training, in terms of going over the notebook, we've expanded the checklist some, and we've put in there some specific checklist for clerk's duties that we pass out at the locations. We did that ahead of the May election. So we're going to just continue to review and refine the material that we provide and hand out and make sure there's enough for all of the workers. You know, there's the judges material and also have handouts for the clerks to assist getting their duties. And the process of walking through that notebook and walking through those forms, I think, is our big focus, aside from the equipment videos in terms of updating our training. Really walking through that judge process and filling out the forms and what the forms mean and all of that piece of it. In addition to that, we are working on our kind of outside training pieces, like our field support training. So we're refining our inspectors training and making sure that we have a consistent training built for the inspectors, putting a PowerPoint together and putting some structure into that, as well as our technicians. I think that would be our update. If you have any questions or want me to talk about anything else about it, let me know. Do you need to add it?
We are implementing a train-the-trainer program too. So here's what's happening there. We'll be able to, you'll have consistency as far as the training. In other words, I'm not saying one thing in the class and another trainer. And again, we may not say it exactly the same way, but the idea, the concept will be the same. So we are working on that. And in fact, I'm actually working on that. And I'm doing scripting as well. So we like to have script. Again, you don't expect anybody except to read it, but you know, hey, if I get stumped, this is what I need to be talking about. So, and I think that was it, pretty much. You talked about the videos, and you also, yeah, we added more visuals to the material, and updating the online training, which we currently do the virtual training, but we'll probably be making some changes to it too.
And part of what goes into some of these, like the train-the-trainer process and what we're looking at is we're going back over the past few elections. We're kind of evaluating all of our questions that came in on our hotline and seeing what are the consistent questions, what are things people aren't necessarily grasping that we need to review our training and refine, what are issues we experience in the field that we know, seem to be not just a one-off issue, but kind of a consistent issue across the board, or at least more than once we experienced it was just a single incident. In addition to the feedback that we received on evaluations that we passed out during training, and anything that we as an internal staff have noticed, like when reviewing the provisional envelopes or different processes where we get material back from the field and we are data entering it or reviewing it and seeing what's consistently, where are some areas for improvement based on errors that we're finding.
In regards to the train-the-trainer program, I know that one of the issues that election workers had was that some of the trainers did not seem to really be comfortable with the material, or that they had never actually worked the election and couldn't answer questions. So who are these trainers? Are they people that are contracted out? Do you have people that were former election workers doing any part of the training, or perhaps people that are current election judges working with the trainers? Or how do you ensure that the trainers know like the actual ins and outs of what the election workers are going to be dealing with?
And since I'm new, I guess I came in, the trainers that were doing the training had been here, but that was one reason why we were trying to implement the trainer program. So that way, everybody would be up to date on what we need to know. Of course, we can't answer every question, but at least familiarizing with this is what we're going to be talking about, and this is what you need to know regarding the information that you're training.
I think it's a few things. So of our trainers that we had ahead of the May election specifically, I think March as well, but I know we had about 7 trainers and 3 of them were experienced election judges. So 2 of them actually work in the field on election day as election judges, and 1 works overseeing our phone bank for the calls that come in, and so they're kind of the lead on those question answers that come in. So about 50% of them. The other half were people who had training experience or more of that teaching experience. And so we put out requests for trainers for people to show interest through our VDR program on our website, quite a few different ways, and they are contracted employees. So this is what we came out of that pool prior to the March election. we're trying to retain our trainers. I mean, I think consistency and having people who have that knowledge, we're building the pool as well, but we've been able to retain most of our trainers. How many? The 7 trainers we have, I believe, worked March and then all the May elections, correct?
Only 2 didn't, but that's because they got outside jobs.
Oh. So we lost 2 trainers from the March election moving through the May election. Ahead of the November election, because it is a temporary job, I would anticipate we might have some turnover and we'll have to recruit some more. But as Curtis said, the train the trainer program, we are expanding the amount of time prior to the elections the trainers come in, and so we can really kind of in-depth walk through scenarios, walk through setting up a polling place, and really do the hands-on simulations with them so that they're prepared for it. I wouldn't anticipate all trainers to be able to answer all questions, but we're kind of built that way where we don't always want them to, right? I mean, sometimes, you're in a room full of people and the one-off question that somebody has isn't really something that you want them to walk out of the room with. You want them to call our hotline and talk to somebody and get that information from there.
I think Lily has a question.
What was that?
I mean, Elaine?
Go ahead, Elaine.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where are we on getting the, that book, the information of the trainers? Where are we on getting that information online? Having it on paper is really cumbersome, and also as things are updated, it's always better to have things online and have them virtual. So where are we on making that happen?
Our checklists are all available online as of the May elections. The PowerPoint presentation is online, and all of our checklists are online. So there's a section under, I believe it's under our training materials, that shows all of our checklists and all of our PowerPoint. The forms and things like that come from the state or that are required to be filled out, those are not on our website, but those are on the Secretary of State's website. We have to.
So that book that we get will no longer be on paper? It's online now?
No, we'll still be providing it by paper as well, but it is available online.
The documents inside the book are all listed online.
You're talking about you want an electronic version of the
whole book?
Of the notebook at the location, is that what we're asking?
No, I'm asking for when I go to training, I get a book. It's called a judge's book. And I have been told previously that it is not available online and that it's only on paper. Is that incorrect?
So the material that we produce out of that book, which is all of our checklists for opening and closing and all the equipment checklists, as well as the PowerPoint that's in there, those are available online.
But it's not compiled in one notebook.
Right, it's not. It says
separate locations, but it's all there. The information's all
yeah.
there. Okay.
And is that sent to us? Is that information sent to us? I wasn't aware of that.
I sent you the link for the training material that is online. Yes, I provided that to you guys.
Okay.
It's several different.
My next question is, I would suggest, and I think that's one of the things that was listed, is that we do a post-review with the judges immediately after the election. Not just after the training class, but after election. Does that make sense?
Are you asking about evaluation after what is that? You cut off, yes.
Survey.
Are you asking?
I'm talking about like the follow-up of how their election day went.
Post-election.
What type of issues yes, correct. Not after, because we do one after training, but we don't do anything after the actual election day. So that's one of the things I think judges have asked for, because they said that the same issues that they have are coming up.
About the survey?
No, I mean, I took it down. I think that this is kind of more for their information, right, as a committee to come up with their.
I know in my commissioner's district, we have after each major election, a review or
Like a debrief.
a debrief, thank you. And and I think someone there takes the notes and maybe they present it to the elections department, but it answers a lot of questions.
Melissa, I have several comments from our district. One of our judges said that she has requested that the judge's training manual be complete for the next training class with more tabs for fingertip access that can allow them a speedy opportunity to look up information when they are in the midst of operating an election. It's difficult to go back and forth looking for information. It said that it would be nice if it had tabs. They're requesting advanced judges training, something separate than a first-time judges training. I guess that's sort of along the lines of the trainers training as well. They said that some of the judges were new, and that's for a lot of different reasons. And they had never conducted an election, and so they lacked a lot of information during the March 1st and the 24th election. They felt like, and then of course the issue with the payroll for the training, you know, the issues of being paid and how that worked and all of that. So that's, I think you all are already aware of payroll issues. And one person actually received a check and it was not allowed, it was not accepted once they got to the bank because it was post-dated, but actually given to them in advance. But when they got to the bank would not honor it. And so that is an issue with training, along with the election day judges. The idea around alternate judges and co-judges during the primaries, some of the co-judges were not properly trained or not consistently trained, not so much as properly, but different information was understood from both sets of judges. And then those persons who were not the new co-judges were giving out bad information to clerks and to residents as they are persons that were voting, or voters. The co-judges, there were some back and forth between a couple of co-judges. And every location was not consistent in their protocols and following Dallas County Election Department protocols. They were asking if there was one person or maybe two or three, maybe assigning by districts or by areas, like a lead judge, someone that's troubleshooting, someone that's senior, a senior judge, something to that effect, that can get out to locations if needed. Talk about the judge's notebook, the checklist and the training in the books given out in advance so that can ensure all the documents are included. They can have training dates ASAP. So the last minute, some said they were not notified in a timely fashion. In addition, yeah, they would like a script. I mean, they don't want people that are training them to read from a script. They felt like that took away from the genuine expertise that the trainer should have. But I know the purpose of a script is for consistency, and I get that. You want to make sure that everyone has the same information when you go through the training. I get that. But some people felt like it just didn't feel like they were genuine or whatever. So I'm just giving the feedback. If there's some type of accelerated training for those that are more experienced, and how is that going to be determined, I don't know. But I know the difficulty in that. Just because you've been a judge for 10 years does not mean that you're a senior judge. I don't know if that's a senior judge test. I don't know, but they were like an accelerated opportunity, if so. If you can merge some of the diagrams of the equipment operation in the notebook, because it was difficult going from diagram to diagram. Having it seems that the parties had different training. I guess the Republican Party conducted training with their Republican judges, and the Democratic did it with the Democratic judges. Is that how it's done?
That is not our recommendation, but the parties do conduct their own.
And because of that, there's inconsistency in information. So when you're on location and you have a Democratic and a Republican judge in the same location, then you have inconsistent information. And so at some point, they're asking for alignment or some type of, I guess if someone can acquiesce and say, hey, this is the way it's going to be. I don't know, but some type of collaboration. So good luck. Again, I'm just sharing, comments from our constituents. Inconsistency in proper voter check-in and misinformation still about acceptable forms of IDs. Simple things like that. People are still having issues. Some judges, some of the co-judges were more quicker to turn a voter away than some judges. And they really want to stress that turning a voter away is the whole last option. That is the complete last option. It is not option 1 or 2. Let's try some things. Let's see if we can, besides turning them away. And they also suggested an election day training versus early voting training. The needs are different, they're saying. And an alternate judge name tag. They're asking for identification. I think the judges have a badge, but now they're asking for an alternate judge name tag so people can know who that other person is. And they said often those persons didn't show up without calling them. They didn't know, I guess they didn't know who to call or whatever, but they said often they were there by themselves during the early voting time. Their alternate judge or co-judge was not there. And that happened way more often than not.
With respect to, you talk about the ID portion of it, I know that one problem that I've encountered over the years consistently is that there are election workers that do the check-in that seem to think that your ID on your driver's license or state ID has to match your voter registration ID,
right?
and it doesn't. But I've had so many people tell me that, oh, you have to vote a provisional because your address doesn't match. And then I go, let me talk to the judge. And then usually the judge knows the correct answer, but it seems that I hear that comment a lot, that election workers, people doing the check-in, seem to think that the addresses have to match.
We did hear that as well, and I know in the May election, we really emphasized that in our training that it does not. And I know in the material we added, as you do the check-in and follow those steps, we specify on there the address does not have to match on the ID, because we got the same feedback pretty consistently as well. So we're going to continue to kind of keep that as one of our points that we stress. I think maybe more outside of the judge training, it needs to go down to the basic training level a little stronger as well. Because I know with the judges, we're very clear about that, but maybe incorporate a little stronger in the basic training.
There was a comment about having a better understanding of curbside voting. Apparently, some of the judges have a different understanding than what they believe the law is stating now. And then it was also suggested if there was like an update on recent election laws. Just something separate, maybe a quick checklist or something that the judges can have, because even when they go through the training and they're on site, there was an election worker who had a different understanding of who could utilize curbside voting than what the judge did, and that created angst between the judge and the worker?
So I think we try to incorporate the updates to the laws into the material itself, and we identified it as new. I don't think that we put them together in one document because, you know, kind of touch a bunch of areas, and there was a lot of updates.
There were a lot of updates, and the judge said that it was in the training.
Yeah.
So that's why she was saying if it was just maybe a one pager that said, these are the major update things that you may, you know, something separate. And even though we've gone through what, 2 elections now, still 3 actually, but still 4. So still, people still questioning about curbside and mail-in ballots. And so whatever that one pager looks like, even though it is infused in the training.
Now, with respect to coordination between the elections department and the parties, is there anything being done to address the issue of poll watchers come November as part of the training? Is there anything new that's being added?
I don't know that it's so much new. I think that we really emphasized and kind of, you know, went through that poll watcher manual and the information that came from the Secretary of State as the last election because it was so new. Our coordination with the parties, I mean, I think we have a good working relationship with both parties. And so, you know, if issues do arise, we are in contact with the parties and we kind of help navigate that through that process. But I think our biggest thing is, you know, contact us. I think what I've learned in poll watcher, when a poll watcher issue comes up and there's a concern at a location, is sometimes the workers are more likely to contact their parties and contact our office, you know, and we're out of the loop. And so I think, you know, we do coordinate with the parties at election day. We had both parties present in our office at different times, just, you know, during the day. So we had that direct coordination with them if something happened. And I think it's important just to communicate, you know, preferably communicate through us as they're the judges for our location so that we can coordinate as necessary with parties.
And then with respect to similar to the coordination issue, since the parties, each party, you know, takes questions, people call them on election day with the problem that they have.
Right.
Is there a process for which that information that the parties collect, does that get passed on to you guys?
Yeah, so 2 different ways. On election day, there's a VIP line, which is essentially for, you know, the city secretaries and the parties and other people that are government entities. And so they can contact us there and give us that information. I also had a lot of calls on my cell phone with getting information from the parties as well. And so there's direct lines between us and the parties throughout the election day. Post-election, we've received kind of a feedback where they've debriefed with their judges and provided us some feedback in terms of here's where we identified issues, here are some of the notes that we have from our judges as well. We take that into consideration in prepping the training and updates.
Based upon what we shared today, the feedback that we're giving you now, does that sound familiar? Did you hear, was there anything new today that we shared with you that you were not?
I think the only thing, because I was taking notes on it, the only thing that I hadn't heard previously was the senior judge idea. We kind of have that inspector program, which I think falls into that idea of having a person with a collected amount of locations in an area to go around and assist with procedural questions and things like that. So the voter ID issue being as big of an issue as it still is, I was a little less aware of. I don't think that I had that reported as much in terms of that. The other items, though, are very familiar, yes.
And they were very appreciative. They still like the assistance with the setup and is it the SWAT team?
SWAT team, yeah.
They like the SWAT team. They like the assistance. They like the check-ins when the team comes around throughout the day, checking in on them. And, you know, and sometimes again, you know, you can be in remote areas, you know, or whatever kind of area. And it feels good to have somebody coming in and checking in just to make sure everybody's good and safe. And so they were very appreciative of that.
Is there a breakdown of the cost of the election? Is it on the website?
I don't believe it's on the website.
I'm just very curious since we've had so many elections and runoffs. Especially this last one where they had they cut down on locations. but I noticed UTD in Richardson was still open, and they said in the November, or in the March election, they only had 11 people. And I'm thinking, that's costing a lot.
So our reduction process that we went through was strictly focused on locations in which there was another location within a half-mile radius. And so there's other locations that were outside of that have low turnout, but there's no nearby locations to take on that,
And I know it's hard for the elections department to come up with sites. They've never been to that site. They're just going on a map. So I understand that. And some of the schools were closed because they were doing construction, air conditioning, anyway, after moving, I thought UTD was going to be closed because they assigned me to UTD. And I said, oh, please don't do that. And so they opened up Canyon Creek Elementary, which was a very logical one. And then I saw that UTD was still on the website. I was just curious to see how many people actually went to that site.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't look at it afterwards, yeah.
The election department has.
And I was gonna say, some of those sites that were closed, they didn't have enough time. I don't think that the website was updated.
Yeah,
Probably, because I know there was not enough, we were close in our timing for that final approval of those locations. So I don't even know if that was ever updated.
It should have been.
Some of those closings.
Yeah, I think it should have been updated, because once we remove them out of the system, then it just generates a new report pretty quickly to be updated. So it's a matter of getting it out of our database, marking it as inactive.
So if you go in, you put your information in for your voter lookup, it will show you your new location.
Well, you're not assigned a location, right?
Well, I mean, but it would tell you the
What's
election,
nearby.
right?
Yeah,
So it would automatically be removed.
it's not automatic, no, but the database is updated pretty quickly, and so it's just a copy and paste. And so
Okay.
I know we did that pretty regularly, because those locations were a little fluid, right? So we had some that were in, some that were out. We had air conditioning go out where a place closed and different things. And so the process we have internally is, once those changes are made in our voting science department, and it's confirmed that that location is no longer available, it's cleared out of the database, and new reports generated, it's emailed out to the staff that says, update all of the ancillary items that need to be updated based on this change. So that's usually done within 24 hours.
Do we have any other questions or comments about the training? Questions?
Yes, I do, just a couple. Please, how are you? I'm not really sure about the train the trainer idea, but the idea of consistent training is one that would help. I didn't know that the Democrats and Republicans were doing different training, and I'd like to know if you know specifically what different things they're telling their folks. That's important to know. I mean, if it's little stuff, or just that's something that specifically needs to be meted out. The post-election debrief is a fantastic idea, and it probably should happen probably no more than 24 to 48 hours after the election. Even if it's after hours, I'd be willing to do that, just to let you know how it all went. You can't wait a week, can't wait a couple days. The post-election debrief is the thing that should happen. The inspectors, I've been doing this 3 years or 4 years as a judge, and I've had there's some great inspectors out there, but there's one inspector, and I'll keep you offline, who is fantastic. And even as an relatively experienced judge, this one particular gentleman just knew stuff. And a lot of our inspectors, apparently, I think they just get like a day training or something, and they send out to be inspectors.
So the
Some of
goal
them-
is our inspectors come from our judge pool, but that requires pulling people out of locations, which is difficult. So some of our
Yeah.
inspectors started in the experienced judges. I think the last couple of elections, we've used a lot of county employees.
Yes, then they haven't been experienced judges. They haven't.
Correct.
They're not wonderful people, but they don't know. They don't. So the inspector training might solve a lot of stuff. And this one particular gentleman, I'll give you his name after offline. He's fantastic. And the idea of election judges or senior judges, maybe some kind of certification. But this year was great in a lot of ways, because we had like 5 elections. So I learned a lot, and I actually remember a lot of stuff. Moving forward, when we only have elections in, I guess, a normal fashion, it would be best, I think it would serve all of us well to have some sort of regularly scheduled, bi-monthly, hour-long chat brief, something, just to remind us of stuff. Because I'm remembering stuff that now that I just didn't remember, because I hadn't gone to any other election judge training, because I've been doing it for so long, and there's so many elections, but I did miss a couple things. So that's it, just those 3 things. Trainer thing will probably be fixed by consistent training. Post-election debrief is a thing, that's number 2. Election inspector training, that was number 3. And election judge senior training certification process, that would be the 4 things that I have.
And in terms of process, we do have a full CEAC meeting on the 19th. And so the subcommittee will present our recommendations to the full CEAC committee. And from that point, it will then get passed on to the elections department, is my understanding of the process. I see that we have a few guests online. Does anybody who's online have a comment or a question, since we have a few minutes? I'm not able to see if there's a chat, so.
They normally raise their hand up. I don't see nobody with their hand up.
We had one at the beginning, when law training began, and will it be ongoing, and will there be a refresher training?
So for the upcoming election, one thing that we're also working to do is kind of start our training a little earlier. On average, I think we're about 4 weeks out from the election. We're looking to expand that to at least the 6-week mark, hopefully a little bit earlier than that, prior to the election, just to give a little bit more of a window to get people through the training process, make sure that everyone's had that, the opportunity to pick a class, et cetera. So about 6 weeks or so out from the election, the training will begin. And we are requiring everybody to attend training this time because it's going to be, not the back-to-back elections, it's prepping for a larger election, and it's going to have some months that have gone by.
In person.
I think that we're still in discussion on that. What we've done with our online training is there's online training for judges in 2 ways, right? So if you worked, for example, for the May elections, we had a quick refresher course because you just did an election. So it was more of what's changed between that point and the next point. And that was a much shorter online training that was really focused on just the points that were either points of concern that we wanted to address or changes that happened. Our online training for judges in general is the full training with the exception of the equipment pieces. And so really to be able to do the online training for experienced judges, you have to be confident with the equipment because that's the portion we don't really have the ability to review. So it'll go over the material, the notebooks, all the procedures, but will not be going over in depth the hands-on portion of touching the equipment.
When you say online training, are you talking about, is that virtual training?
Yes, virtual training.
Okay, it's not just going online.
Not
and
independent training.
And then signing.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it'll be a virtual training class. And we will have the ability to incorporate some of the equipment pieces. That's why we're doing the videos as well, to kind of, still get some of those pieces in there, but it's just difficult to do, the machine training is really important to be hands-on if you're not that familiar with it. So it's very limited to our experienced judges, which as you guys also mentioned, identifying what that means, right? So we're kind of currently working on an evaluation process where we're taking all of the, the same kind of information we're taking to develop our training, we're taking that same kind of information to go through the judges and identify what we would consider experience, number of elections were, success of the election, any concerns have been brought up, and we're providing that feedback to the parties as well. So that's in process. We haven't quite identified what that criteria is yet, but we're gathering all of our sources first and evaluating it.
I have a question. So I know that there was an issue around recruitment of judges. And I understand that there was a 2-year process of collecting judges and people signed up to be judges. And then there was some training around those 2-year periods and bringing people together. And then in March, we found ourselves with not enough judges. So I would highly recommend that we look at some type of judge appreciation opportunities, you know, bringing all the judges together and showing some like a little reception, and then maybe a meet and greet with the judges, a recruitment reception for new judges. I'm just thinking that in this time period, this is the time to engage with prospective judges, and so that they can understand what the expectations are. Almost like a recruitment fair, but we don't want to wait till 4 weeks, you know, in advance. Some people that could be judges, they have vacation plans. Some people are retirees, and they make those vacation plans months in advance. But if they knew months in advance that they could be a judge, or these are the times that they are needed, then, you know, they may be able to, you know, postpone some of those activities.
And we are currently in process with the parties in terms of going to Commissioners Court with a new appointed list. So we've kind of gone through the appointed list and found people who've resigned, people who are no longer working in vacant positions, et cetera. And we're working with both parties. We just met with them last week. We're going to continue weekly meetings in terms of our recruitment process for that. I think that also internally, because, you know, our role in terms of the recruitment process is to fill the holes, right? So step one is let's get the people appointed from both parties, and then also for us to fill the holes. And so we have, we're putting out some Facebook ads and some other things in the next couple of weeks to kind of put together a pool of potential judges who are interested, and asking similar questions. How far are you willing to travel to work, you know, based on the locations we have available, et cetera. So we are definitely pushing a recruitment effort this month. I agree with you.
Awesome, thank you. I just don't want us to wait till October.
Yeah, that is our focus right now.
Melissa, can I make one more point about the inspectors?
Yeah.
I have an inspector come to my site, which is a slow site, sometimes 3 times, and I don't need them. I don't need them. But there are places that do need them. So it would be nice if I knew, or all the judges knew ahead of time who the designated inspector was, maybe get his number, and just have him on call if we need him. He comes out there. They're really quick on the draw, but I think we're running the inspectors around a little too much because they don't need to come to my site. They just don't. I mean, one time or maybe, but some sites that are near me have 200 or 300 or 400 people on election, and they probably would be better suited, needed there, just to hang out there.
So the idea with the inspectors is 2 things. Number one, we did give them a checklist that kind of says, here are the things that we want you to look for, stop 1, stop 2, and stop 3. We prioritize those based on, stop 1 is a very brief stop, make sure everyone's able to get up and running. Do they need your help setting up? You know, like what are the needs to get open in the morning? Right. And then step 2 is kind of evaluating, you know, your signage placement and kind of say, you know, giving suggestions if there's any, I can't see your location or I can't follow signage, and making sure people understand the procedures and answer any questions. And then step 3 is kind of prepping for the closing procedures. So there are often times where an inspector is not going to make all 3 stops because they do have a location that really needs some extra assistance. And so they'll spend some time there with that judge or with those workers, helping them problem solve, helping them kind of figure some things out. And they may not make all 3 stops. Your inspector may have been able to make all 3 stops because they had really good sites maybe all around. I'm not sure. Because I would tell you.
Slow election, that's why.
Huh?
It was slow.
That's a big piece of it. Because
Right.
we do go through the checklist and see which inspectors were able to make all 3 of their stops, which ones weren't, what were the issues as to why they didn't make all 3 stops. We ask them to record the time so we can kind of evaluate, are we giving them too many sites or not enough sites to go to? So, you know, it's kind of a fluctuating process, but I think just the standard of making 3 stops is to just have those check-in points, but they are told if there is an issue, if there's a site that needs more attention, then they can prioritize that. But making the, you know, they make the rounds as they're not problem solving. If they're problem solving, that's their priority. So I would guess they just didn't need a problem solve.
Hardly ever.
Well, and you're very lucky because I can tell you there are some
Right.
that have to do a lot of problem solving.
Well, I'd like to thank the members of the training department for answering our questions today.
We appreciate it.
And unless somebody has anything else, should we entertain a motion to adjourn? Okay, so the meeting is adjourned at 11:48 p.m. And again, the full CF will be meeting on the 19th. Yeah, next week. There you go. And I'll send out minutes to you guys.
Thank you.
I just came from school years ago.